Hello and welcome to Eerie Earth. I'm your host Kieran, thank you for joining. In this podcast, I take you on a journey through the paranormal, where we talk about all things creepy, from ghosts, cryptids, and much more. So sit back, relax, and join me as we explore this eerie earth. In this podcast, we have visited Scotland's capital, Edinburgh, a few times, but today we're going to the other side of Scotland to discuss an interesting case in Glasgow. This is the tale of the Gorbals vampire. Now, you wouldn't usually associate Scotland with stories of vampires, but there's a few tales of the fanged beasts from Madame Violet and her vampire hive in Edinburgh to Melrose, Alnwick, and even Highgate Cemetery in London. However, like all folklore cases, there's no hard evidence to prove that these cases were even real. But the hype surrounding the Gorbals vampire was certainly real, and even went to the House of Commons. Where did this unbelievable case take place? High up in the south side of Scotland's biggest city, nestled behind Glasgow Cathedral, sits the Necropolis, a sprawling cemetery which is cropped on top of a hill looking out over the metropolis of Glasgow. Twisted trees line the stone path that winds around the hill, and headstones and graves litter the ground, covering the top of the hill in neat rows that thousands of visitors of Glasgow will visit. Perched on top of the hill is a large pillar with a statue of the great Scottish divine and reformer John Knox looking out over the city. As beautiful and impressive as the cemetery is, there's an odd feeling about the place. That could be because the fact that there's thousands of graves and as much bodies, or it could be the fact that you spend hours there and not see another soul. Or that you're with the dead, and the sanctuary of the city is a stone's throw away, but far away enough that no one can hear you scream. The necropolis was built in 1832, and is home to over 250,000 bodies, be it lawyers, doctors, poets, merchants and paupers. Every day, thousands of people visit the site to take in the views offered to them from on top of the hill. Ghost tours take unsuspecting tourists through the crumbling gravestones and regale them with stories of the supernatural. Many know stories of hauntings that plague the peaceful rows of gravestones. Young children sitting on the graves, women in white meandering through the stones, or in Edinburgh's case, violent poltergeists that like to bite, scratch, burn and bruise. But for Glasgow, their haunting is a little different. It's not a woman in white, or a small child, or even zombified figures stalking visitors. It is a 7-foot-tall vampire with metal teeth. That's right, a 7-foot vampire that stalks its victims amongst the graveyard. So sit back, get your garlic ready, and get Buffy on speed dial as I tell you about the vampire of the Glasgow Necropolis. You may know vampires from pop culture like The Lost Boys, Dusk Till Dawn, and dare I say it, Twilight. But where did the lores of vampires come from? The legends of beings drinking blood can be found dating back to ancient Greek, Roman, and Mesopotamian culture, with reference to creatures that would prey on their victims and drink their blood. But the lore really came into fruition in the 11th century in Eastern Europe and the Balkans. It's thought that the word vampire comes from the Baltic for appear, which means the thing at the feast or sacrifice, but the word vampire came to Europe from German and French. But the modern take on the vampire blew up in popularity in the 19th century with Bram Stoker's novel Dracula, released in 1897, which brought a legend of a demure creature that would lure innocent victims to him and turn them into a creature of the undead. However, it wasn't until 1922 when the silent movie Nosferatu appeared on our screens and brought vampires to popular culture. And then, 9 years later, Dracula was released in 1931 starring Bela Lugosi, and from there, vampires became even more popular. Anyone who knows me knows that The Lost Boys, released in 1987, is my favourite vampire movie. So how did a vampire end up in Glasgow? Well, before I tell you that, let's set the scene. Glasgow in the 1950s was a poverty-stricken city, with many areas struggling, most notably the Gorbals, which was known as the slum of the city. Trying to recover from the impact of the Second World War, with massive unemployment in areas of the city, and in the poverty-stricken areas, alcoholism and drugs were prevalent. In 1954, a rumour began to circulate amongst the children of the Gorbals area of Glasgow. During a dark, wet night in September, as the mist rolled over the city, a large vampire had kidnapped 2 school children, taken them back to his lair at the necropolis, eating them, and disposed of their bodies. While there was no evidence to prove that the boys were kidnapped, let alone devoured by an undead beast, the children of Glasgow were not convinced, and took it upon themselves to investigate. Armed with crosses, clubs and stakes, hundreds of children descended upon the cemetery. A thin layer of fog carpeted the damp grass, the stones like tiny towers poking through the clouds as they tried to seek out the Gorbals vampire. Some say the rumour of the vampire started in the playground, and when school was over, the children flocked to the necropolis. They made their way through the gatehouse, gathered in the dusk as the sun slowly set over the city, casting large skeletal shadows through the fog. Eyewitness reports stated that nearly 200 to 300 children turned up to find their supernatural foe, with children ranging from age 4 to 14, and lots of dogs. However, fear would grip at many, as some just sat on the graves and the walls and didn't get involved, but most were actively looking for the creature, as they scoured the hillside, searching behind graves and trees, ready to chop off the creature's head. It is reported that a vast majority had no idea what a vampire even was. But how did word of a vampire start? Was it just rumours, or a vivid imagination? For this we don't really know for sure. But some would say it was comics from America that caused the hysteria. One in particular, a 1953 issue of Dark Mysteries, has included a creature similar to the Gorbals vampire, a monster with iron teeth, so it was presumed that this was the cause of the outcry, coupled with the imagination of children. So the House of Commons called for a ban on the publications in the UK to stop this from happening again. Others thought perhaps it came from the church, with a large Catholic, Protestant and Jewish community in Glasgow at the time, and in the book of Daniel there is mention of a large hellish creature with iron teeth. After 3 days of the children attending the foggy, creepy cemetery, the hysteria began to die down, but whispers of the vampire continued, and even today some still believe that a creature lurks the winding pathways of the resting place. If you ever visit the necropolis, which I would highly recommend, you never know, you might come face to face with a terrifying creature yourself. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Eerie Earth. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider following us on Spotify and leave a review for the podcast. You can follow us on Instagram at Eerie Earth Official and subscribe to us on YouTube at Eerie Earth Official. This episode was brought to you by Eerie Earth Tours, a 5-star rated dark history and ghost tour company based in Edinburgh. If you'd like to book a tour with us, please visit eerieearthtours.com or visit Viator or TripAdvisor. Follow us on Instagram at Eerie Earth Tours and subscribe to us on YouTube at Eerie Earth Tours. Thank you very much for listening, and as always, bye bye for now.